Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielsen and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Hey, what is up, Lock Shoppers? Listen, for all those of you in Edmonton, I don't even have to say, did you have a good weekend? Damn right you had a good weekend. The Oilers are going to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time since 2006. And I imagine not only are there a bunch of happy fans, but probably quite a few Lock Shoppers that maybe took my advice and jumped on them at plus 230 going into Game 4, thinking they could even up this series. I'm not sure we had them ending in 6. I know I didn't. One Game 7 would have been nice for our over 12 and a half total games in the conference finals. But I don't think anyone is upset about finishing off the Dallas Stars in 6 in our audience. Welcome to everyone listening on the Edmonton Sports Talk stream. Andrew Paterson, Jake Bolin Moss with you today. And shout out to everybody in chat. Duck Dad's already on it. What time do I have to tune into WST for the Huss and Remo apology to the Oilers faithful for their lack of respect picking the Stars to win the series? Hey, listen, I wasn't the only one. And I think we saw with the numbers going into this series. I mean, the Oilers were underdogs. Very different scenario than when they were the massive favorites against Vancouver. But man, did they play well. And we've got lots to get to on that. We're going to touch on the Canadian Open, where Jake was, of course, for the weekend. And of course, the upcoming CFL season as well. But I imagine the hockey talk will have dominated. JBM, how the heck are you? And by the way, shout out, if you're not already following at Coolbet Canada and at Jake Bolin Moss, you missed out some amazing content with the boots on the ground in Hamilton at the Canadian Open. You seem to have quite the weekend, almost up there with Oiler fans.
Yeah, I got my steps in this weekend, that's for sure. I was out at the Canadian Open on Wednesday for the practice round. Shot a little content with Adam Spenson. We had a little social media promotion that we ran throughout the weekend for a little giveaway. So we'll be doing the draw for that, or the spin for that soon. And then I was out there Thursday for the first round, Friday for the second round, and then back out there Sunday for the final round. I'll be honest with you, Huss, just with the way things were going, the way Bobby Mack seemed to have it locked in there coming down the stretch, I peeled out a little early after Pendy finished up because I wanted to beat some of the rush. My phone was also on the verge of death. My portable had died, and if I would have lost my phone and not been able to call an Uber, that could have been a bit of a mess. So I ended up peeling out. I didn't actually get to see Bobby Mack get it done, but I saw a ton of content after the fact. I was listening to it on the radio. It seemed like a great moment for him and his dad, who flew out for the week to be his caddy. Incredible.
Really, listen, it was a cool moment. I mean, obviously, I was sort of pulling for potentially a playoff, and then when Perez got one up on the other guys, you realize, hey, this is a two-man show. Bobby Mack, I mean, he deserved it. Played unbelievably. I mean, I think, note to self, and we'll talk about this with Pat on Wednesday, when guys that are normally very average putters come in with really hot putters, maybe we should spend a little bit more time paying attention to them. I mean, that was the difference. He was the number one in the field on the greens this week and got it done. And listen, there was a moment there where it looked like it could be Mac Hughes going back-to-back for Canada. He had that great front nine, fell back a little bit afterwards. Rory, by the way, shout out to Pat. I mean, automatic with the Greggy Golf Special. Pendy and Svetty to make the cut, check. And then Rory top 10. And I mean, Rory was pushing, to maybe get into a playoff at the end. But overall, it looked like the crowds were crazy at that event, Jake.
Yeah, crowds were incredible from day one. Like the Pendy golf with Rory, and it was hard to even follow Pendy because of how deep the crowds were. I had a video of it on Thursday, kind of standing there waiting for Pendy to roll into hole 9, and there's a crowds 4 or 5 deep with people just trying to follow Rory McIlroy. So, the crowds were awesome right up until the final day, and it was a great moment. I mean, even though it wasn't a Canadian again, you have to remember, I was listening to a little bit of PGA radio yesterday, and they were saying, I think people are so excited for like something like last year to happen again. You have to remember that hadn't happened for 73 years or something like that. There's a reason like stuff like that only happens so often. And obviously the way it all happened was incredible. They actually had a Nick Taylor make the Nick Taylor 72-foot putt at one of the practice greens for fans. And if you made the putt, you won a Scotty Cameron putter and upgraded tickets. And one of our guys, Andrew, his brother actually hit the putt, so he won a Scotty Cameron. Yeah. Yeah, you had 2 chances for $20, and then it all went to charity or whatever, the money. And you could really do it as many times as you want. So if you put in $100, you get 10 chances. And yeah, his brother ended up making one, so he got a Scotty out of it.
Unbelievable. I got to tell you, this was I was so jealous of seeing you around there. That actually sounds really cool. I mean, I got to give Golf Canada a lot of credit. I mean, they have built this event along with RBC into, something so far what this tournament was, even like 5-6 years ago. And I think a big part of it, speaking to that 73-year drought, is the fact that we've got so many awesome Canadians right now on tour. I mean, obviously, Hadwin and Connors have had their moments, Mac Hughes as well. But with Pendy coming up and Adam Svensson and Nick Taylor, these guys are all getting wins on the PGA Tour, and it's put golf in a much better place. And listen, I don't think we're going to be going 7 years maybe without Canadians winning the tournament. Although if we keep getting strong fields, it makes it that much tougher, but certainly worthwhile. Anyways, great event, great content from you and the Coolbet team. And they're off to the Memorial this week, and Pat and I will jump all over that on Wednesday's Lock Shop. But we've got a lot to talk about with the Oilers.
How about this? So we spent most of the week with Spenny. He was easier just to follow in terms of the crowds. So he played, 72 holes. I think he ended up 1 under for the tournament. He's now at Cherry Hill, just like Niagara area. Longest day in golf. He's trying to qualify for the U.S. Open right now. So he's solo 4th right now after his first round. He's getting ready to go out, I believe, in 30 minutes here. So it never ends, man. Like 72 holes from Thursday to Sunday, and he's back out there playing 36 today, trying to qualify for the U.S. Open.
You know what? I'm glad you reminded me about that. I think our guy Aaron Cockrell is in that stage as well. And a couple of other guys with ties to here. Braxton Kuntz, I know, who's the Manitoba Amateur Champion, has made it to the final round. But I don't know if he's in the Toronto or that Eastern one that everyone's getting at today. But yeah, the U.S. Open's coming around pretty fast. So there's a ton of qualifiers over the next few days to make this all happen. We'll wish Svenny good luck on that. And again, shout out to the Coolbet gang of Taylor Pendrith and Adam Svensson for great weekends and for coming through for us on the Greggy Golf Special at plus 300. To the Oilers. And I'm just looking at some of these chats. Spency 5 Centsy. The Oilers going to the finals is cool and all, but getting 10 shots in a game when I'm gambling on shot props is unacceptable. I will say this. I don't know whether that game that the Oilers played last night is going to get it done against Florida. And the thing is, what Dallas did last night, putting 35 on net, is what Florida does every night. But listen, I mean, when you have a guy like Connor McDavid doing McDavid things, and that goal, like that kind of ripped the soul out of the Dallas Stars. I mean, even like the Oilers had one shot forever in the first period. Well, that one shot was him dangling a Conn Smythe favorite out of his skates, going roof daddy and putting his team up right now. And then, of course, Zach Hyman scoring from distance. I mean, that might be the longest goal that he's scored in a couple of years, getting it done. And I've been so impressed with the way, and listen, the Oilers have blown leads in the past. And we remember how the series started up against Vancouver, and we saw what happened earlier in the Dallas series. What they did in game 6 and 7 against Vancouver, and then what they were able to do last night, like not to the same extent. Dallas was getting chances and getting shots, but you need your goalie to step up and make some saves. And they were doing it despite Skinner earlier in the playoffs. That might have been Skinner's best game last night, especially when you consider the pressure and the moment and obviously the scenario. So I mean, full marks to Edmonton for getting it done. But I know Chris Knobloch, when he's putting together his game plan, is not going to be looking to be outshot by 25 when they play the Panthers.
Yeah, listen, I might have dropped a couple shutouts in a group chat or two. The shutout didn't happen for Stuart Skinner last night, but he was incredible. And really one of the main reasons why they ended up winning that game, despite only having 10 shots. So, pretty crazy way to win and seal the Stanley Cup Finals appearance for Edmonton. It's such a tough spot for me, Huss. I like, we got Florida on one side, who I can't stand, especially after last season. Just the way Bennett took out Nyes and just, a number of things. Gudas yelling in Wool's face, and I know he's not there anymore, but it's just, it still lingers. And then Edmonton, who everyone's claiming to be Canada's team, and I'm not doing it. No offense to the ESTers and the Nasties. I refuse to cheer for the Edmonton Oilers. And I want to know, and I talked to Huss about this pre-show, I want to know in the chat, if roles are reversed right now and the Toronto Maple Leafs punch their ticket to the Stanley Cup Final, how many Edmonton fans will actually be rooting for Toronto? Because I expect not many, if any. I totally understand that, but I just want to know, if you guys understand where I'm coming from, where it's like, I just cannot do it. And I've got friends who are. They're like, want to see McDavid get one. And I'm just like, if any Canadian team's going to win the Stanley Cup, it's going to be my Canadian team, So I don't know. It may be selfish. Okay. Maybe it's a little petty, but that's how I feel.
It's funny you say that. And WSTers that are with us right now will know that I have made this claim for a long time. Like, I don't buy into the Canadian team. Like, is it embarrassing that we haven't won it since 93? Yeah. But since the Jets came into the NHL, I've been saying Winnipeg will be the team that ends the drought. So that has always been my stance on this. And listen, if it was the Leafs, the answer to that is 0 or 1 or 2% of people that have ties. Like, for the most part, it would be no. I got to tell you, I'm coming around a little bit on this. Like, I don't feel as overwhelmingly stringent with the take that I've had for years right now. And obviously working with the guys at EST and being on this station every day for the Lock Shop, I do have an affinity for the Oilers, just the amount we've talked about them, the way they play them. And listen, when it comes down to it, we've got a once-in-a-generation superstar that I think has been held back by a number of issues with the organization and the roster, that is on the verge of, stamping himself amongst the all-time greats by leading his team to a championship. And I'm here for that. I mean, listen, I really don't have a strong rooting interest. And there's a lot of people around Winnipeg that still like Paul Maurice and what he's been through. He's there, on the verge of finally getting his hands on the Stanley Cup, which has eluded him up until this point. So I definitely hear you, though. Like, put it this way. If I'm pulling for Edmonton, it'll be connections to the city. It'll be McDavid. It won't be because I'm really concerned that a Canadian team has to win the Stanley Cup. And I can tell you right now, if it was the Leafs, you're right. I would be definitely out on that. If it was the Montreal Canadiens, 100%. If it was the Vancouver Canucks, hell no. Calgary's a little insignificant right now in the big picture, but Ottawa, I might be cheering for. I've sort of got a soft spot for Ottawa.
Never in my life. Never.
You got a big rivalry.
Wouldn't even. Oh my God. Ottawa, disgusting. So I'm Hustler.
Here. But there's a lot of things I can't stand about Florida as well. So,
well, that's the problem, right? So, anyways, I feel vindicated. I'm also catching strays for no reason, but that's fine. I get it. People wouldn't cheer for the Leafs, and that's why I'm not going to cheer for Edmonton. I actually wish this Cup final just never end. I just hope no one ends. But
maybe now. Why couldn't the pandemic happen now?
I can still be happy for Edmonton fans without actually wanting to cheer for Edmonton. Like, I love the people in the chat. I mean, I think we have some great banter, every time I'm on this show. So I can still be happy for the fans and still not be cheering for Edmonton. I think that those can go hand in hand.
Yeah, but if you have to if you have to be on one side or the other, listen, I've always thought that I would never be cheering for another Canadian team, and even having backed Dallas, I've found myself through this series sort of pulling for Edmonton and happy that they got through. So I don't know. When it comes down to it, I'll be it would be very cool to see McDavid get his hands on the cup. But you know what the other thing is? And I think I'm not sure if there's been one incident that could have possibly turned public support for the Edmonton Oilers more than a certain incident that happened at the watch party on Game 5.
Goodness.
This woman must be like the most sought after and hunted person on the internet right now. Of course, I think everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, how many times has that shown up on your feed in the last 48 hours?
I don't know. I don't want to expose myself, Hustler, to say how many times that it's come to the point where it's not even the video anymore. I'm now just getting a picture of the woman, just her face. Yeah, I know what it's from. I'm just like, I know what that's from. I've seen that before. So yeah, no, it's all over my feed. I can't escape it. I cannot escape it. It's everywhere, and I'm sure the nasties know what we're talking about. That might have turned the entire series around, and here we are, staring down the barrel of a Stanley Cup Final. Edmonton's 4 wins away. I mean, we can't deny the fact that that's just the truth right now. 4 wins away from a Stanley Cup, and maybe this woman has a little bit to do with it.
If the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, does she get a ring?
She should get on one of the parade buses, I think.
Yeah.
People love that.
I'm sure the guys had some fun with that this morning on on the Nielsen show. I'm not sure whether anyone has already said, "Oh yeah, this is my friend." I'm hoping that she's like a kindergarten teacher or something like that. Like something really, really funny. Now he's the most famous person in Edmonton. And Pratt has a lot of admirers. I'll say that, a lot of admirers as well. Oh man. As far as the series goes, though, I mean, once again, actually, let's pull this up right now. See if anything's changed since last night. Shout out to Coolbet for getting the lines up ASAP after it's all said and done. The series total. Ooh, actually, this has moved a little bit. To the Panthers. So Oiler fans, good news. If you haven't made your bet yet, you're getting a better number than it was last night. I think this one dropped at minus 125 for the Panthers and plus 105 for Edmonton. I see it now at minus 132 for Florida and plus 110 with Edmonton. I saw something from Travis Yost earlier today, Jake, that said, and he's a big analytics guy. They had, and often we joke about expected goals. I'm like, it's great to have expected goals. How about real goals? The number 1 and 2 teams in the NHL this year in plus minus expected goals, Edmonton and Florida. Analytically, Florida is the team just with shot quality, shot quantity, game over game over game. Kind of puts them like do they have a McDavid? No. I think they probably got a deeper team. They've handled teams before. They were there last year. Just had a great chat with Bill Lindsay in Florida earlier this morning for WST on that. But man, I mean, you've got a team like Edmonton that's playing the way they are with their top end guys seemingly on a mission. I think there'll be a lot of people jumping on the Oilers before this series gets going, especially if the number comes up a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we got a ton of series prices up there now, series spreads, series total games. But if you're an Oilers fan, you're staring down the barrel. If you didn't get a piece of them, at this point, you're still getting plus money to see your team, come through and win a Stanley Cup. So it's a good spot to be if you're an Oilers bettor, to say the least. And I mean, we talked about it last week, how many people have some juicy Oilers tickets from earlier in the season when they started on a skid. I think I saw a tweet today. It said that at one point they were 2-9-1, right? So, I mean, it didn't start the way for how the season started. It's crazy that we're sitting here right now talking about the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Final.
Do you recall, and I'll put this out to the chat, I'm sure there's probably somebody here that, I mean, we've done so many of these shows and talked about so many lines. It's tough to remember everything, but there was a time when the Oilers were around the number they are right now to win this series to make the playoffs. Like when they were 2-9-1. After that loss to San Jose, which essentially was the final nail in the Jay Woodcroft coffin. The advanced numbers said that they had like a 30-35% chance to make the playoffs. I think everybody knew the talent in that room. Certainly the books did. I mean, they weren't listing them at 100-1 to win the cup. But I do think around that time, like, because keep in mind, they started off as a favorite this year, like in and around 5 or 6-1, if I recall correctly. They ended up saying Northside Sandwich. I got Oilers 20-1 for the cup win. Nicely done. Now, was that basically at that point? Had they come back and won a couple games? I thought
they were 5-12-1 at their worst. 5-12-1.
Yeah.
And and here we are. They just took Dallas in 6, took care of business with Vancouver. I guess that one went 7, right? And took care of business against the Kings. I'll tell you what, the one thing about the Florida series, thinking about the teams that Edmonton's played, I think this is going to be the most physical series they have. The way Florida plays hockey, like, they are not afraid to get in the corners, get into the dirty areas, stir things up. You saw it in the Rangers series, and they really dominated that Rangers series. I know it went 6 games, but I think we talked about it. Like, that could have easily been a sweep for Florida, as much as deep as it went. So, it'll be interesting to see how Edmonton handles the physicality of Florida, and I think it's going to be one of those series where it's like game adjustment, like. And I'm hoping for a better cup final than last year. I don't know if you remember last year, but it just felt like Florida they were so banged up at that point and really didn't have it going. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Vegas, I think, got them in 5. And that last game was like they scored 9 goals or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a hockey fan, someone not cheering for the Oilers really and doesn't want to cheer for Florida either, guys. I'm hoping for a lot of games. If we can get a Game 7 in a cup final, that makes me happy. It's going to go one way or the other. So that's something out of my control.
Well, and you know what? Let's speaking of Game 7, I mean, let's look at some of the props that are up right now at Coolbet on this series. As I mentioned, Florida's minus 132 to win the cup. The Edmonton Oilers, as of right now, are plus 110. It opened at plus 105, so this has gone towards Florida. And I think maybe people a little freaked out by the fact that the Oilers were outshot by 25 last night and still managed to get the win. Nobody cares about that in Edmonton this morning, I'll tell you that much. And just to your point about Florida last year, the difference to this year, like they played right through to the end and almost didn't make the playoffs last season. And then, of course, ended up beating Boston in that crazy upset. I mean, they were sitting guys in game 73, 74, 75. Healthy scratches, just letting guys get healthy. And they haven't really sustained any significant injuries right now. They are so much healthier than they were last year, which is certainly something that buoys people on the Florida side of things. As far as the total, for this series to be a sweep under 4.5 games, it's plus 550. I can't see that happening.
Nope.
If you like this series to go the distance and go to 7, it's plus 200. You can, and now they've also got specific, and I saw Spency, I think, was in there and cashed an Oilers in 6 bet. For instance, for the Oilers to win in a sweep, it's 11-1. For the Oilers to win in 5, 7-1. Game 6 is crucial, much like, if you're starting on the road like the Oilers did in this past series, if you can get it to 3-2 coming home, you've got the opportunity to win it on home ice like they did last night. That scenario is plus 450, and Oilers to win in 7 is 5-1. For the Panthers, A sweep is plus 950. 5-game win is 5-1. A 6-game win is 5-1. And Panthers in 7 is plus 425. Here's another interesting one, Jake. And this is not one that I have played before, but something for us to chew on at least right now. The exact series score after game 3. Panthers 2-1, plus 130. Oilers 2-1, plus 160. Panthers 3-0, 5-1. Oilers 3-0, plus 750. I mean, you can see the numbers are skewed a little bit towards the Panthers, and you would assume that with the minus 132 plus 110 difference. But I mean, when you look at how close these numbers are, like from the game 7 scenarios, the game 6 scenarios, like the Oilers might be an underdog, but it's not a massive underdog. And listen, when you got the horses that Edmonton has and the performance that they did and coming back and showing what they could do against a Dallas team that I think everyone agreed was right up there with the best in the NHL, there's a path for this team to win. And I think they sort of did it against Dallas, but I think they have to move up one more notch and consistently throughout the series if they want to get it done. But tell you what, it's hard to bet against them when you see the way they've turned around, and especially the goaltending that they're getting from Stuart Skinner. I mean, early on, they survived him playing horribly. He got pulled in the Vancouver series, and yet there he is with a performance of his career. It's amazing how things can change in the playoffs too.
Yeah, it's been incredible. Just the storylines alone, it's just been like you said, Skinner starting off so poorly, getting pulled in the Vancouver series, coming back, being as good as he's been down the stretch, especially last night. Also, another note here, Northside Sandwich said he bet it on November 26th. They were 7-12-1 is when he got it at 20-1. So good time to get in on them early in the season. 2
wins in a row. It might have been 22 or 23 at 5-12-1, but
right.
That's a heck of a bet. By the way, I got to shout out Big Maple Sports Cards, who was just mentioning he's got a 4-leg futures ticket, Oilers Cup, Lions Super Bowl. Dusty will love that one. Homa to win a major, and the Phillies to win a World Series. That's a wild one out there, dude. But I wanted to give him a shout out because he had a very nice UFC parlay that he posted.
Nice.
And I was looking, and because I'm not a big UFC guy, but I always bet the free UFC bet. It's one of the best promos on Coolbet. I'm like, okay, who am I putting my bet on this weekend? And I looked at Big Maple's parlay, and like there was a few chalky, like there was minus 286, -2, and there was one guy in there that was plus 100, and his name escapes me. To me, he was just the plus 100 guy from Big Maple's parlay, but he won. He came through, and Maple hit his parlay as well with all the other ones. So nice work on that. And thank you for the great tip. Because we came through, and now we've got this free 25er to spend on maybe some baseball tonight. That is the one thing I have to think about, Jake. This is going to be a one of those weeks. Like, we've got a basketball game on Thursday. The Cup Final begins on Saturday.
Right.
And thank God we have the return of the Canadian Football League, Bombers and Alouettes, kicking things off on Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday right here. And so coming up tomorrow, I'm really looking forward to this just because we do have a little bit of downtime, but we want to get ready for CFL season. Iwanek and I are going to go through our favorite bets for the CFL, our favorite win totals for the CFL. Looks like we've got we've got a ton of receiving props up. We've got passing props. We've got rushing props. So I'm going to be diving into those tonight. And then tonight for tomorrow, we'll go over like the big picture with Matt. And then between Jake and Pat jumping on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday obviously will be a lot of golf. We'll also fire out some individual player props. And I'll actually lean on Dusty. I know he's away, but I'll see if he wants to fire out a few of his favorite player props and we'll get to those. We'll get to those coming up as well. Hey, just 1 second here, and I know we're going to turn it over to Zach to come afterwards, but I would be not doing my job here on Edmonton Sports Talk without letting you guys know about today's keyword for the $100,000 hole-in-one presented by Golf Town. Again, you know what to do, folks, for your chance to qualify for the Golf Town Edmonton Sports Talk $100,000 hole-in-one. Text in the keyword, and today's keyword is approach. So text approach to 780-218-9999. That's 780-218-9999. Approach for your chance to qualify for the $100,000 hole-in-one, brought to you by Golf Town. Zach or Matt, when they take over for us heading into the top of the hour, we'll fill you in a little bit more on that. But Jake, listen, we've talked a lot of hockey, and we're going to have a lot of time to set this series up and make picks. It's a great time. By the way, shout out to the Sea Bears, CEBL, another big win, another easy cover. I love the fact that the CEBL games are all up on Coolbet as well. Stingers, actually, Edmonton Stingers have a pretty good squad. I didn't catch the rest of the action on the weekend. I was focused in on that one. But listen, we're going to have time to get into some French Open, some big matches as we get into week 2 of the tournament on both sides. But let's talk a little baseball, Jake. And your Blue Jays are hanging in there. They've made hay against some not so good teams. And as we sit here to begin the month of June, they may be last place in the division, but only 2 games under 500, only a game back of third in the Boston Red Sox, and dare I say, showing some signs of maybe turning the corner.
Yeah, well, tonight's going to be a big telling point of this season. They released those new jerseys. I'd love to know what people thought about those in the nasty chat.
What do you like? What do you think of them?
I'm not big on them personally, but they are growing on me. The more wins they get in these jerseys, the more I'm like, maybe. Like I'm very weird that way. My buddy, like from get-go, has been like, these are good jerseys, and I'm like, nah, I don't know if they're good jerseys. And then the more I see them wearing them, I think and now I'm getting on a tangent about these jerseys, but I think when they add like the different accessories and stuff, if they got the red arm sleeve on, and when it all comes together with the hat and everything, it looks nice. I think the hat on its own stinks. I think the jersey on its own is a little better than that. I don't know if I'll be purchasing one, but they've won 5 of their last 6, but you got to remember they swept the White Sox, who are the worst team in baseball. They took 2 or 3 against the Pirates, who aren't that great either. Tonight, they're still home. I might get out to the game tomorrow, actually, now that I mention it. And they got division rival in the Orioles. And the Orioles are, I believe, leading the division. Or actually, maybe it's the Yankees. And the Orioles are first wild card. My apologies. So the Orioles are the first wild card in the AL, second in the AL East. This is a team that you got to take games off of, especially when you're chasing down other teams like the Twins in the wild card. So, good to beat bad teams. I think that's what you're expecting out of this team. But can you take a series against a divisional rival, against a team that, maybe you're not necessarily chasing down because how far ahead they are, but, a team that you really need to beat to continue to move forward? Because at some point, Huss, we're going to be talking about, are the Blue Jays buyers or sellers, right? Like, it's coming up to that. There's been a lot of talk about Vladdy and Bo. Yesterday, I think Atkins came out and said, we want to keep our superstars. We don't want to move on from them. So it's an interesting time right now. Like you said, they're only 2 games back of 500, 4.5 back of the final wild card. They get on a bit of a run here and win a few series, they'll be right back up there in the standings. So sweeps matter too. Beating bad teams matters. But let's see. I just want to check how many games this Orioles series is. So I know sometimes they'll do 4 bangers. Looks like, 4. They got 4 games against the Orioles this week. So a huge series. If we want to take the Jays seriously, 2 at the very least, 3 would be ideal. is what I'd say.
Well, and pretty nice start. You got Rodriguez on the hill for Baltimore, and Kevin Gausman. And Gauze is traditionally a guy that gets better as it gets warmer. I mean, he had some ups and downs over the course of April and in May. But like, he's exactly the guy I think I'd want on the hill to lead off an important series like this and try and get you off on the right foot. Like, the Jays are super slight. This is almost a pick 'em. I'm looking at the what is it? Baltimore minus 111, Jays minus 105. So Baltimore, the slightest of favorites. But listen, Gausman and the way things have gone. By the way, I watched the game on, was it Friday night? The 14-inning game against the Pirates.
I caught the end of it.
Absolutely bananas game. So many chances to win, so many chances to lose. I mean, it's so rare that you get, like with the rules right now, a game going to 14. But man, your boy the Stash with that game winner after being honestly a bit of a goat earlier in the game with missing a few opportunities. I gave him a nice boost, and then a big win yesterday. So as you mentioned, 5 of 6 going into tonight's game. I will be on the Blue Jays tonight. Just trying to see if maybe there's a couple of other. Look at this screwball for the Tigers, 7-1.
Yep, been really good.
2.01 ERA. Hell of a pitching matchup going up against Evaldi with the Texas Rangers, and that game very similar, basically the same line as what we had. Minus 112 for the Tigers and minus 104 for the Rangers. The Cards, I actually did bet the Cards last night as an underdog to beat the Phillies. They came through on Sunday Night Baseball, salvaging something out of that matchup. And they're both in action tonight. The Phillies are playing an earlier game, like it's 6:30, I guess. 4:30 Eastern, maybe, or no, 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 out here. 4:30 in around in for 4:40, I should say, in Edmonton. But the Phillies, a big favorite against the Milwaukee Brewers. Brian Wilson's actually on the hill. He's been 3-1, a 3.19, but Zach Wheeler, one of the aces of the Phillies, and that's the biggest favor on the board today at plus 215. Later on, Kyle Gibson for the Cards. They're taking on the Astros. Astros a big favorite, minus 190 with Verlander on the hill. And you got the Reds and Rockies, two teams well under 500. Was it Abbott's pitching for a Cincinnati, 3-5 with a 3.29 ERA? Well, I could give you an argument that Cincinnati in this spot's actually not a bad. That one looks like it's basically a pick 'em. What do we have it here? Yeah, it is a straight up pick 'em, minus 109. And then late games with the Padres and Angels. Padres minus 147, Angels plus 125, and the Giants and the D-backs. Arizona minus 135 and the Giants plus 115. What do you think about the Jays and Reds?
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I was just looking. Feltner hasn't had a good season. 1-4 with a 5.46 ERA. I was actually peeking over to see what the Reds team total is. 5.5. Juicy. I mean, it's the elevation, right? When you play at in Colorado, you see those high totals. The total for the game is 11.5. 5.5 for the Reds. But yeah, I don't mind that at all. It's a good little number. Let's see. Jays and Reds plus 274. We could fire up a little ride with Huss if you want to. Probably get it to 3-1.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, is there another game that we want to put on it and make it a 3-banger? I'm looking at this Padres Angels game, and Waldron's pitching for the Padres. He's 3-5 with a 4.26. And the Angels have Tyler Anderson going. He's actually been pretty darn good so far this season. 2.47 ERA with 48 Ks, 5-5 on a team that is 17 games under 500. They're a plus 125 dog at home against the Padres, who were 2 games above 500. I actually don't mind that. I might take, what do we think about? Is there any objections in the chat right now? Angels at plus 125 against the Giants right now.
Does look like Big Maple had the Padres in his group of spreads there. I know he
I
had
think he had a plus. I
there.
think he had a plus 1.5 on that one, or minus 1.5.
No, he had minus 1.5 Padres. But yeah, it's kind of this point of the season where I start to get into baseball a little more, where it's like, okay, where's everyone at? Who's good, who's bad?
Exactly. Dig again.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, why don't we do that? Let's do a ride with us. Jays, Reds. And we'll throw that into the exclusives.
Jays, Reds, okay. The other thing I was going to say, Huss, if you're leaning Angels, you're not getting a bad number on the plus 1.5, minus 141. Not that I don't know how many baseball games are ending in one-run games, but if you have a little faith in Anderson in maybe a tight loss, that could be another route you go. Or we just stick with Jays, Reds. I think it's simple enough. People are definitely going to ride it as well. So
yeah, let's just do that. We're basically taking two home teams on pick'ems against pretty good opponents. Well, one against a really good opponent, one against a brutal opponent. I guess the Reds are the road team. But anyways, that's just a straight up pick'em. They got a better pitcher. The Rockies stink. And, we're kind of riding with Gausman for a little positive momentum to kick off this series against the Blue Jays. So let's do that. We'll throw that up in the exclusives a little later on. We'll touch on it on Winnipeg Sports Talk a little later. But in the meantime, rest of the week is as follows. Tomorrow, Matthew Iwanek and myself will obviously talk Oilers and Panthers. We'll get his thoughts on the series and any angles we might want to dive into. We'll see if there's props for the series actually as they come out for, goals, assists, those sort of things. When they're ready, we'll get into that. But tomorrow, CFL preview, win totals, and we'll see what Iwanek thinks about some of the player props that we've got out right now coming up at Coolbet. And then Pat will join me on Wednesday. We'll get Patty's thoughts on the Cup Final, NBA Final, CFL season. We'll make our bets for Memorial. Jake's going to be back on Thursday, first night of the NBA championship series and our first official CFL game. And then Pat again on Friday, and we'll chop up week 1 picks in the CFL. Lean on Dusty to get his in as well. And we'll take it from there. Jake, great work again this weekend. And great stuff today jumping in the lock shop.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And we got US Open next week as well. I know we're not jumping too far ahead, but still some good times in the sports world, even if we don't have hockey and NBA going on.
No doubt about it. Yeah, Oiler fans, save up, see if you can get your hand on a ticket. I can't wait to hear what those are going for. But in the meantime, we're going to turn it back over to the ESTHQ. And for those of you that want to, we'll fire up Winnipeg Sports Talk with more of the Cup Final. Jeff Hamilton on the CFL and more coming up in about 10 minutes. Jake, thanks for doing this as always.
Yeah, thanks, Fuss.
Later.
Sorry, boys, I sent it back a little bit early. Hey, guys, I have some business to do. Of course, Huss earlier gave out the keyword to qualify for the $100,000 hole-in-one presented by Golftown. And the winner of that one today is Garrett. So, Garrett, tomorrow you'll have a 1 in 4 chance tomorrow on the Nielsen Show to get a call from the boys. And if you win, you'll have a possibility of having the swing for $100,000. So that'll be the 6th person in line. We already have qualified 5 people, and we're going to qualify 19 more, 25 total. So that's going to be a good one. And as well, we're also giving away 4 VIP tickets to the Kevin Hart Show at the Great Outdoors Comedy Festival. We're doing that until the 13th of this month, and on the 14th, the winner will be announced. So text in OIL as they won yesterday, and of course, they're off to the Stanley Cup Final. So text in OIL for the chance to win those tickets to Kevin Hart. The boys did a good show as always, and in a little bit here, we will be back for the Oil Stream. Tom Gazzola and Sean Bell will recap what happened last night in Game 6 in the Oilers win, taking the West and heading down to Sunrise, Florida this Saturday up against the Panthers for Game 1, 6 p.m. puck drop. So for now, that'll be the end of the Lock Shop. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. The boys will be on in a second. Ciao for now. Don't go anywhere.